Welcome to the Sly Getting Tech Simplified channel. And today I got a phenomenal lady. You're going to love her. Her name is Quintessence Anx, and she is going to share her fantastic story today with our audience. So you do not want to miss a second. Quintessence, would you please share how you got started inside the IT field?
Sure. I was actually, when I went to school at university, I went to school for physics and mathematics. I wasn't even in computer science. And I decided I was graduating in the 08, 09 recession. And I decided I wanted something a little more sustainable than what would have relied on grad funding. And so when I graduated, I actually started my first post-undergrad position in tech support. And I have been working with some tech support in university and a different, type of tech support. So the university tech support was maintaining campus IT. And then the post-school tech support, the first job I had was at a company called Atto that manufactured its own RAID equipment. So I was actually in a lab with hardware. And I just kind of circuitously moved my way through technology from there.
And how did you know technology was for you? Because I know you did math, you did physics, and that usually indicates you're going to be good in IT. But did you make those connections in there, and that's what kind of drifted you over to IT? Like, how did you know that?
I didn't. I just didn't. Okay. And when I decided to make that leap, I was trying to find the beginnings of what I hoped would be a more sustainable career. I had a dependent at the time. I had other concerns. So I wanted to pick a job that I thought was actually sustainable, but I hoped would also allow me to use my actual talents, right? So I don't really need so much of anything I learned in actual undergrad to function in IT, not even today. Most of the stuff that I had to learn as I moved along through my career path on the job or between jobs or whatever I was doing. But I did want to have something, as I could see technology was creeping in everywhere. So my thought was the overlap would be high. And worst case scenario, I could learn enough of technology or enough of development to do computational physics or something that would be a hybrid type of role. And then I could guarantee success that way, hopefully, or try to guarantee success.
So I got a question for you. You said you did mathematics and physics. Two of those things give most people nightmares of trying to do it. You did both of those. Like, how did you know that you wanted to do that and then to enroll in that? Were you just good at, did you spend a lot of time in math and sciences in like elementary school, junior high school, and high school, and you knew you wanted to take that on in college?
It was more of a means to an end. So I did spend a lot of time in STEM in school, like all K through 12. Yes, absolutely. But one of the things that I wanted to do was actually astronomy and astrophysics. Okay. And so I looked up the requirements for those, and it was physics and mathematics. And that is why I ended up rolling in physics and mathematics, because I had an end goal that I needed those to meet at the time. So yeah, that's how that happened.
So question, SpaceX, if you're listening to this, you got to hire my girl Quinn right here, because she got it going on. Let me stop playing. But that's pretty cool. That's pretty ambitious. And I want to talk to my the ladies that's watching this, and the men too. If you have a curiosity, just go all into it. Because I'm pretty sure, Quinn, it had to be times where it was challenging for you, and you probably didn't know if you was going to make it through those. Like, how did you get through those rough bumps when you was in those vigorous courses, those pretty tough and challenging courses?
Deep breaths. So the way my brain works, there are certain topics, and this is true for everyone, there's certain topics you're really good at them and you can just clip right through, and then some other topics where you just can't. And I was very good at mechanics, and I was very good at learning the beginnings of relativity and those types of things. And I was really bad at electricity and magnetism. Really, my brain just couldn't do it. I don't know why at the time. It just couldn't visualize the circuits. It couldn't, I had to really pull my way through that for whatever reason. And it was one of those things where I actually had to put in double time for that particular set of subjects and get outside help. And, just try and learn what I need to know and hope that it wouldn't apply too much later, or else I would be really stressed out.
Yeah. And we kind of talked about this before we started recording this. Like, for me, I'm good at architecting. I'm good with the customers, marketing. That stuff is great. When it came to coding, never could click. Certain things I'm putting in time and I'm not getting that much better. I'm reaching out to people, right? And I'm realizing, like, maybe that's not for me. But at the same time, I realize the amount of energy I put forth to solve that problem, right? When it's like a marketing problem, I'm reading like a ton of books, right? I'm reaching out to people. I'm spending hours in the morning and night, or even for like certain tech architect questions. But I'm not doing that for when I'm trying to code, right? And so maybe it's an interest thing. So I'm realizing if you're listening to this, if it's something you're really not good at, just ask yourself, how much time are you really putting into it? And you might just be average at that thing, but you might just need it to get through, right? Because some courses,
Right.
when I was in college, I did horrible at, but I don't even talk to them now. I just needed to get through that point, and I focused my energy on my strengths, but I was aware of my weaknesses, and just had a stronger team that can help those out. That kind of goes into our next question. So you're pretty successful right now, and you went through a lot and gained a lot of valuable experience. What would you talk to the younger Quinn, and what would you say to her to maybe look at life a little bit differently from the experiences that you achieved today?
Yeah, I would probably tell her to watch her environments more, because people like to give a lot of advice that works on the surface, but if you're not watching your environment, you can't always tell why it's not actually able to go through. Easy example, when people say don't be afraid to fail, that's a big thing to say in industry. In IT you can iterate very quickly, so why shouldn't you be afraid to fail? But if everyone's afraid to fail, watch your environment. Is there something about your environment that is making people afraid to fail? And if so, can you cope with that? Do you need to exit strategy that? What does that mean? And what does that look like? How nimble can you be? Because, when you're talking about any industry, and it's not just IT, you need to be able to be nimble on your feet and be able to transition between jobs. And we talk a lot about the upfront work that things like boot camps and such can provide. And those are very specific learnings. Usually you have a specific set of tools or languages that they're using in that boot camp. Then the rest of it and all the rest of your professional career is going to be almost exclusively on the job training for something, because everyone's applied very specific things, frameworks, versions, etc., that you need to be able to learn on your feet and do.
That was well said. I haven't got anything to add to that. That was beautifully said, and I just agree with that. Right. So yeah, that's good, man. Let's get to the next question. That was great. So I guess for you is, how do you go about getting what you're worth and going into interviews, right? Because sometimes I feel like when I speak to women, especially, they either feel like they're not getting paid as much as their male counterparts, or they didn't ask for enough. So how do you kind of tackle that problem or situation?
Oh, it happens so much. I will start by saying it. I kept going back to knowing where you're at. The way that I would negotiate my worth now is not the way I would have recommended to myself a decade ago when I was first starting out, because I have more bargaining power now, right? I work at PagerDuty right now. They are a very big company. They are a very well-known company. It would take a lot to make me want to leave that company. I love working for them. Yeah. But because of my lengthy work history, right? And because I have the job role that I have, I can negotiate based on that, right? But when I was first starting out, I would have very different negotiating tactics. So beginner me would need to negotiate on what I could do to show value, that whole trap of proving experience to get experience, that first job, maybe 2 out of school. And that's how I would try and maximize that conversation. At every level, I would need to research the title spectrum in that space. So there's a big title explosion, for example, when you're talking about something that describes the job role of infrastructure engineering. And depending on what you're doing, you can have different titles. You can have cloud engineer, automation engineer. Automation engineer may not be infrastructure engineer. DevOps engineer. The list goes on. I could keep going. But if I look at these job titles and I see that they're roughly the same role, and then notice one of the titles pays better than the others, I'm going to optimize for that. I'm going to either apply to jobs that list the higher paying role, or I'm going to see if I have enough weight to bring with me that I can negotiate for that title change while I'm interviewing or soon thereafter, right?
That was beautifully said, because I definitely do something similar, right? In the beginning, again, you don't really have that experience to say that I can definitely do this. You might do that. Like I did it in a way of when I was fresh out of college, I was like the VP of marketing, but I was a technology, the VP of technology for the American Marketing Association, designed a website. And I also did the systems, right? Like the email marketing and everything there, right? Then I was also on the information technology board again, and for the technology, the IT group, right? And I used those in the beginning to kind of show them that I can take on projects my own and deliver it. I can work with a group. You can do these things to show me, to show that I had the skill set. Then I also did an unpaid internship for 6 months doing IT, right? And that gave me hands-on experience, right? But now, when I'm more established now, when I'm going to these different roles, I don't have to do that. It's a different conversation. It's more just breaking down and going into the details of what I'm doing on a day-to-day basis. But you're right. If you just look for a general technology consultant, they don't get paid as much as a Microsoft or let's say a cloud architect. Then I realized if you do a cloud security architect, they get paid even more, right? So then I look at, like, for me, when I look at a job posting, I use it. I got a green marker, I got a yellow marker, and I got a red marker. And you don't need that. You can just put it in, OneDrive, into Word
Right.
or to OneNote and just highlight it. And then I see
Right.
what green is what I can do. Yellow is what I can teach myself. And red is like, I have no idea how to do it. And I need to go either talk to somebody or go learn something or just, try to make sure I can overcompensate on the green and the yellow, turn the yellow into green. And that's how I prepare sometimes now. And then I realize I don't even need to do that sometimes. I just need to find, do I know someone there? Right? Because if I know
Right.
someone there, then they know my skill sets. They usually go to bat for me. I still interview, but it makes it a little bit easier to get in there. So even if you don't have the skill set yet, maybe focus on building your networks. And that's the good thing with LinkedIn. It gives you the ability to, two things: find people you don't know yet, find people at the organization. But most importantly, it also shows you skills for the future. So if you want to be a security engineer, you can look at my profile. But then you can look at
Right.
15 other ones. Like what I like to do is like, man, this person is a manager for security engineers, and this is what they did. And I look at 10 other people. I'm like, man, I don't
Right.
have that on there. I don't have that. This is what I learned. It pretty much helps you get to where you want to go. It's like you have the answers to the test, and all you got to do is study it, and then you can apply it, So,
Yeah, and kind of continuing on with that, what you kind of touched on really broadly is career is strategy, right? So when you're earlier, well, I guess at any stage when you're researching, the different titles and the different people in those titles, but because it's strategy, there are two other things that you can know. You need to know when to leave, but you also need to know if you're going in with a long-term or a short-term strategy, because conditions change. You might be matched up with a manager that's really great, and maybe they leave and now their new manager isn't so great,
yeah.
and you need to make an exit strategy you didn't plan on. But you need to know what your staying conditions are. And if you're going into a position where you might need an exit strategy when you enter, and this can happen to a lot of people who are junior in the field, because that whole problem of getting that first job on paper so they can get other jobs is a big problem, right? And when I had a mentor a mentee a few years ago, and she started a job, and there were some rumblings in the company that maybe weren't so great. And she was like, "Do I need to worry about this?" And I'm like, "Not as the intern, you don't." But you might not be able to stay there if things continue or whatever. And she did end up leaving after about a year or so. But that was one of those enter with an exit strategy situations, right? You just stay, you think about, what do I want to get out of this opportunity? And what can I bring with me when I leave in that kind of situation?
Yep, and I'm glad you touched on that, because that's another great gem that Quinn just dropped for you. Is if you sometimes I've taken jobs knowing that I was overqualified. So when I came out of school, I took a tech support job. On paper, I'm overqualified, but I knew I didn't have application real world. So yeah, on paper I'm overqualified, but I know it's a lot for me to learn there. So I started off there. And then I found something else that I like to do, right? I did 1 year, learned it, I took the book knowledge and applied it and went somewhere else, right? But I also got humble because I realized that degree is just a piece of paper, right? Because I had people who had high school diplomas. That was fantastic, right? That was
Right.
absolutely amazing. And I needed to see that, because that put me at least, I guess it humbled me a little bit and showed me that it's about how you use your time, right? Because I also realized my friend who didn't go to college, he spent those 4 years getting real experience. He learned how to code. He also took a couple of intern roles, and now me and him make about the same, right? Because he has 4 more years of experience, hands-on experience, where he took that time to really build a skill, and
Yeah.
found a company that would take a risk on him. And now, I mean, same thing, right? I went to school, and I had to get those, like where I'm starting off, he already passed it already. But again, it was strategic, right? It was strategy. And I say that to say that you don't have to do that. I believe in higher education, but you can do it. And with all the tools you have now, you can learn a lot of stuff on your own, depending on what degree you're going for and what's your end goal.
Right.
Do I say a doctor shouldn't go to school? I don't think that's a good idea. Maybe you could do that. But again, like these are just general concepts. You got to kind of know yourself and apply it. And we're just giving you some ideas that helped us, but that's an area doesn't mean it's going to help you too, right? I would like to put that out there. Is just use our stories to help you define your own, right? And see if it helps you or not, So
Absolutely.
the next thing I want to get into is we talked about negotiation for salaries. Let's kind of wind it down. Can you share some of your favorite books that you like to read?
Yeah. So lately I've been working my way through finishing Radical Candor, and that one's by Kim Scott.
Mm-hmm.
And I definitely recommend that one. I also, at least on the topic of negotiations, There's Never Split the Difference.
Yeah.
And that is by Chris Voss, and that's been a really good book as well. Kind of exceeding scope of the conversation, but still highly relevant, especially within IT, because it's a big problem, is how to be an anti-racist, which I think is a great kind of way to get into all the issues that are starting to really come to light about what's been going on, and not just technology, but systemically.
Yeah, and that's again, like we gotta show the full sides of us, right? So we're all individuals, and we love self-help books, but you gotta, I know you're reading other things too, so that's cool. Like I'm reading one of my favorite books, rereading it. It's called Why Should White Guys Have All the Fun? And it's this is one of the first Black billionaires, Reginald Lewis, who he did like corporate acquisitions in a time where a lot of African Americans just didn't do that. Right. So, and it just talks about how methodically he was with his time and day, and how he persevered from, the rags to riches stories, right, to figure out how he got there. And it helps me figure out how I can improve little things in myself that will have, long-term changes, right? How I'm using my time, how I'm looking at certain situations, right? And challenging my assumptions. Well, it's a really good book, right? And again, I also like Crucial Conversations if you're looking at negotiation. And also, I'm a big poetry reader. I love Langston Hughes, right? I just like the way poets use language to be so descriptive, right? It makes me look at things differently. And even when I'm in IT, like I can use some of those in like the way I present, right? I can articulate a little bit differently. So again, it brings another light. It just makes it a little bit more enjoyable, because we all like complex people, we do this for work, but we also got lives outside of it. So thank you for sharing with that. And
actually, if you want one more before you go on, it's fiction, so it's not related to anything like that. But since you mentioned you like poetry, it's not poetry. It's Johnny Appleseed by Joshua Whitehead, and the titular character, Johnny Appleseed, is actually a Native American two-spirit. So it has a lot of Native American stories. So if you want to follow the story of just maybe someone that you haven't encountered.
Okay, yeah, I'm definitely going to add that to my book list. Thank you. That's great. See, this is why I love doing these connections. I get to read things that I normally wouldn't read, and it helps me look at things differently. So thank you for that. So before we go today, I want people to be able to connect with you, Quinn. So what's the best medium that you prefer the audience to get in contact with you?
The easiest way is DMing me on Twitter, at least for an initial contact. And my Twitter handle is just my name. So at Quintessence Anx is how you would reach me.
Oh, fantastic. Well, Sly Gittins and Quinn are out. Peace.